You walk around this building and everyone is so supportive and so excited about what is happening with the Fever. And
nobody saw it coming quite like this. One press conference, one GM stepping up to a microphone, and suddenly the entire basketball world had something to argue about again. Amber Cox didn't call a meeting to do damage control. She didn't show up with talking points designed to keep sponsors happy. She showed up with the truth. And sometimes the truth hits harder than anything else you can throw at a crowd. What she said about Caitlin Clark wasn't flattery. It wasn't the kind of polished corporate language you normally hear from front office executives. It was the kind of honesty that only comes from someone who has watched something extraordinary unfold right in front of her eyes, up close day after day, and genuinely cannot keep it to herself anymore. So before you scroll past this thinking you already know the story, understand that what actually happened inside that Indiana organization over the last year goes so much deeper than the injury updates and the box scores and the hot takes you saw flying around on social media. This is the real version, and it changes everything. Let's go back to the beginning, because that's where the foundation of this whole story was laid. When Caitlin Clark walked across that stage in 2024 as the first overall pick, the energy in the room wasn't normal draft energy. It was something else entirely. This wasn't just a team selecting a basketball player. This was a franchise inheriting a cultural moment. Clark had already done things at Iowa that people in college basketball hadn't seen in generations. She broke scoring records that had stood for decades. She turned women's college basketball into must-watch television on a national scale. She was the kind of athlete that made people who didn't follow basketball suddenly start following basketball. The Indiana Fever weren't just getting a rookie. They were getting a movement, a fan base, a spotlight, and an enormous amount of pressure that comes with all of it. And the front office knew it. But there's a massive difference between knowing something is coming and actually standing in the middle of it when it arrives. That first season in 2024 was proof of exactly what Clark was capable of. She averaged over 19 points a game. She led the entire WNBA in assists. She dragged a Fever team that started the year one and ate back into playoff contention. Rookie of the Year, first team All-WNBA, jersey sales through the roof, arenas selling out in cities where Indiana hadn't moved tickets like that in years, networks restructuring their broadcast schedules just to fit her games into prime time slots. What she did in that first season wasn't just impressive for a rookie. It was historic by any standard, any era, any version of the sport you want to compare it to. And she was 22 years old doing all of it. So naturally, heading into 2025, the expectations had nowhere to go but higher. New coach Stephanie White came in with a system built to unlock even more of Clark's offensive potential. Veterans were added to the roster. The depth chart looked more complete than it had in years. Everyone around the league was circling Indiana games on their calendar. This felt like the season where the Fever were supposed to take the next real step toward contention. And then the injuries started. First, it was a left quad issue in May, the kind of thing that makes you nervous but feels manageable. Then, before she could get fully right, a left groin injury showed up in June and slowed the recovery all over again. And just when momentum was starting to build back, a right groin injury hit in mid-July, and that one was the one that ended the conversation entirely. Game after game, Clark was on the sideline in street clothes. Fans were frustrated. Critics had plenty of material to work with. Speculation about what was really happening inside the organization started spreading across every platform imaginable. People were filling in the blanks because nobody was giving them the full picture. Then on September 4th, Clark posted on social media and confirmed what a lot of people had quietly feared. The season was over. 13 games played. Done. She wrote that disappointed wasn't even a big enough word for how she was feeling. and you could feel the weight of that in every single word she chose. That post broke through the internet in a way that very few athlete statements actually do, because it was real, it was raw, and it came from someone who had worked herself to the bone, trying to get back on the floor, and still couldn't make it happen. But here's the part that most people missed in that moment. While everyone was reacting to Clark's post, Amber Cox was preparing to say something that would matter far more in the long run. Cox stepped forward during the team's exit interviews, and she didn't soften anything. She said clearly and directly that Clark had done everything the organization asked of her, and more. Nobody worked harder than Caitlin, Cox said. Nobody wanted to be back out on that court more than she did. Those aren't words chosen for a press release. Those are words that come from watching someone grind through rehabilitation every single day, showing up when she didn't have to, pushing limits even when the smart medical call was to slow down. Cox confirmed in her written statement that Clark spent hours in the gym daily working toward a return, and that the organization made the call to shut her down because protecting her long-term health was always going to be the priority over forcing a comeback that the calendar simply didn't have room for. That's a front office making the right decision even when it was an unpopular one. But then Cox said something that reframed the entire conversation. And this is the part that made the basketball world genuinely stop and pay attention. When reporters asked her about 2026, Cox didn't pause. She didn't hedge. She looked straight ahead and said she believed they were about to see Clark reach an entirely different level. Think about what that actually means. In just 13 games during an injury-plagued season, Clark was still averaging over 16 points and nearly 9 assists per game. She still made the All-Star team for the second straight year. She was still the most talked about player in the league, without even being on the floor for most of it. And the person running the franchise is standing at a podium telling the world that there's a gear Clark hasn't even touched yet. That's not spin. That's a declaration. And the rest of the WNBA should be taking notes. What made Cox's confidence even more striking was the specific reason she gave for it. Because it wasn't just about Clark's talent. It was about who Clark showed herself to be when things got hard. When most elite athletes deal with a serious injury that keeps them out for months, they pull back. They do their rehab. They show up to home games when they feel like it. They protect their energy and their emotions, and that's understandable. That's not what happened here. Every road trip the Fever took while Clark was injured, she was on that plane. Every game, home or away, she was on that bench, not sitting there quietly feeling sorry for herself, but locked in, vocal, coaching teammates through defensive assignments, celebrating buckets like she was the one who made them. Cox called her a great teammate and a genuine leader during a stretch when most players would have quietly accepted a reduced role and waited for the season to end. Kelsey Mitchell, who had a career year carrying the offensive load with Clark sidelined and averaging over 20 points a game, talked about how the situation needed to be understood with nuance and patience. Mitchell has dealt with serious injuries herself throughout her career, and she brought that perspective to how she approached Clark's absence. Getting her back at full strength was always the only answer that made sense. Meanwhile, something deeper was being built inside that locker room that no front office transaction can replicate. Genuine chemistry, real connection, the kind of culture that actually sustains winning over time. Teammates talked openly about how close this group had become. Clark, Lexi Hull, and Sophie Cunningham formed such a tight bond that teammates nicknamed the trio. Players described pre-game rituals and routines that Clark kept up with Aaliyah Boston even while she was watching games from the bench. And when team president Kelly Krokoff revealed what the players had asked for before the 2025 season even began, it said everything about the mentality of this group. They didn't want superstar names brought in from the outside. They wanted the culture they had already started to build to be protected. Protect what we've got going was the message that came directly from the players. That's not a locker room in chaos. That's a group that knows exactly what it has and refuses to let anyone disrupt it. Of course, not everyone was willing to tell that story. In late 2024, Hall of Famer Cheryl Swoops made claims that there was real tension inside the Fever organization. She suggested players were uncomfortable with the magnitude of attention that Clark brought with her everywhere she went. The story spread fast the way those stories always do, screenshots and takes and debates flooding every corner of sports media for weeks. But when it came time to back it up, there was nothing there. Swoops acknowledged she hadn't been inside the locker room. No player stepped forward to confirm any part of the narrative. No evidence surfaced to support the tension she described. And when Clark addressed it herself during a March Madness broadcast sitting alongside Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, she handled it with a maturity that silenced the noise better than any fiery response could have. She acknowledged that people always think they know what's behind closed doors, and made clear that the only people who actually knew the truth were the ones inside that building. The performance Indiana put together without Clark spoke louder than any of those rumors ever could. Without their best player for the majority of the season, the Fever won the Commissioner's Cup for the first time in franchise history. They knocked out the Atlanta Dream in the first round of the playoffs. They pushed the Las Vegas Aces, one of the most dominant franchises the WNBA has ever seen, all the way to a winner-take-all Game 5 in the semifinals before losing in overtime. They came within one game of a WNBA Finals appearance. All of that without Caitlin Clark in the rotation. And on every single one of those sidelines, she was there completely locked in, pouring every bit of competitive energy she had into her teammates' success. Now, heading into 2026, the pieces are falling into place in a way that should genuinely frighten the rest of the league. The new CBA compressed the offseason into a matter of weeks. Expansion drafts for Portland and Toronto reshaped rosters across the board. Indiana lost a couple of players in that process, but Cox never flinched. Her message stayed consistent from the final buzzer of the 2025 season through every roster decision that followed. Keep Kelsey Mitchell in a Fever uniform. That was the stated priority, and she made no secret of it. With Clark and Aaliyah Boston already locked in under contract and Mitchell back in the fold, Indiana arguably has the most dangerous core in the entire league. And the momentum isn't just happening on the court. When Clark showed up as a contributor on NBC's Basketball Night in America alongside Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady, even Cox couldn't contain herself on social media. NBC's own executive producer called Clark the most iconic figure in basketball, not women's basketball, not college basketball, basketball full stop. And when Clark was asked directly about the Fever's championship chances on that platform, she didn't pause or deflect. She said she thought Indiana was going to be the favorite to win it all. She said it with the calm confidence of someone who has been sitting on that sideline for a year with nothing to do but study, prepare, and get hungry. That's not media training. That's someone who spent an entire season watching and waiting and building towards something. So when you put everything together, Amber Cox didn't step to that microphone to manage the narrative or calm anyone down. She spoke because she has seen something that she genuinely cannot stop believing in. She watched this player fight through injuries, show up for her teammates when she had every excuse not to, hold a locker room together through adversity, and emerge from one of the hardest years of her career more focused and more dangerous than before. The teammates believe it. The coach believes it. The GM believes it. And now the 2026 season is right around the corner with a roster that's deeper, a hunger that's been building for 12 months, and a player who by every account hasn't come close to showing the world what she's actually capable of yet. The rest of the WNBA has had a year to prepare for what's coming. Whether that's actually enough is a whole different question.